thank you very much. We're going to have a very interesting discussion with two very smart women. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce the fantastic CEO of MainOne, Funke, who really is the reason we're all here, and Libby Barr, who despite being Scottish is,
Can't have everything.
yes, very, very good at providing internet connectivity for lots of people in different places. And I like the combination you were talking about today, the combination between terrestrial fiber and satellite, because we do live in a very big continent, and we live in a big continent with lots of challenges. And satellite remains one of the best ways to get to the very hard to reach places. Let's just start this, Funke. How do businesses and individuals in a very fully connected society function? Do you think Nigeria is well connected? Do you think there's more we could do? What would Nigeria look like as a fully connected country?
Thank you, Toby. When we look at connectivity here, the statistics from our regulators say we have about 100 million mobile digital connections, and as you already said, we're perhaps a mobile-only, mobile-first society. When we break those numbers down, the reality is it goes to perhaps about 50 million users, because a lot of individuals have multiple lines, and what you do have is a concentration of that usage in our large cities, which obviously have more economic capacity, are more dense in terms of the population distribution, and so they do have better infrastructure and investment to provide those services. And so the secondary cities, and sometimes you have large institutions outside the cities. You have universities with considerably large population. You have schools where people live all over the country. You have government agencies, other services. You have businesses and means of production. And so some of those places are not as well connected. So we are starting to see an adoption of online banking, mobile banking, where we're starting to build agent networks. But there's still considerable disparity between urban and rural areas, which is where the vision of getting everyone connected says a lot of education, better content. So just starting with the young population. You can think of employment. Employment in our rural areas had tended to be either a government institution or agriculture. With access to connectivity, you can start to see new forms of employment in rural areas, and you don't have this rapid urban migration that we have. Some of the services, just in terms of scale-ups also, when you look at the startups here, they're not able to address the full market because the full market is not connected. So when you look at the size of Nigeria versus the opportunity that we're able to harness, it is somewhat limited because not enough people are in that connected net. So we think a connected Nigeria, a fully connected Nigeria, is a more economically prosperous Nigeria, is a better educated Nigeria, is a Nigeria where access to social services and healthcare services are able to reach more of our population, which in and of itself adds to more prosperity for Nigeria. And I think that opportunity to use technology to drive economic development, I think is a vision that we have for a fully connected Nigeria.
Thank you. I mean, it is quite profound. I mean, when you bring so many people online, so many new possibilities exist. Those potential jobs in rural areas. I mean, China has people who sit at computers doing all of those identifications. Is this a street sign? Is it a car? You've seen that capture, or recapture when you log on. There's so many possibilities. Libby, what has what are the gaps that Avanti has filled in this connectivity value chain in other parts of the world? And what do you expect to be able to do in Nigeria?
I think, as an organization, I think it's very interesting in terms of how do you get to a point where you're a fully connected country. And ultimately, if I look at what we've been able to do in other countries, there's a piece about how we work with local businesses, the regulators, the government. I think you're quite lucky here. I know our experience was that the regulators were very supportive in us basically bringing the business and the base station or the ground station to Nigeria. But to answer the question, I think what we can bring is our experience in countries like Kenya, where we have supported, we've supported in building out 300 connections to schools. We're educating online more than 200,000 people. We understand some of the challenges in more rural areas. And if you look at, from a business perspective, how small businesses can then grow in rural areas, then the connectivity from a satellite, from our Hylas 4 satellite here in Nigeria, giving that sort of full coverage of the country, starts to fill some of these gaps. And this is one of the big things we're working on with MainOne. But I think the experience of doing it in other countries and ultimately understanding some of the challenges that we have with countries when you need to expand, because this is something that everyone has to be part of. Nobody can do it alone.
No one can be left behind. Isn't that the great thing about the internet, that everybody has the same fundamental access to it? Which countries do you think are ahead of the curve in this digital transformation, and why? And how can it be replicated here in Nigeria?
Yeah, I think if you look at countries like Morocco, actually South Africa are further ahead.
I mean, recently South Africa's been further ahead in corruption, I can say without...
Yeah, but in coverage now, in terms of this piece about forward-thinking governments, you need that support from the governments as well. As I say, Morocco would be an example of that as well. So I think there are countries out there that we can learn from.
Great, and I must say, even though I joke, our president last night in our State of the Nation spent a lot of time talking about the fourth industrial revolution, technology, the importance of that. It's very important when leaders of countries understand what the future is bringing and how to get there, because that policy and regulatory enablement is what's so important, right? Because how do you widen the connectivity envelope, Funke? How do we get more people on board?
How do you get more people connected?
Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned, you have fiber coming into your home in South Africa. So part of getting people connected here is deploying more fiber. And you just talked about the importance of regulators. So getting more people connected says putting in more of that infrastructure, where it's openly accessible and shared. So that from an economic standpoint, it is indeed affordable to the populations you're bringing it in. It's also being pragmatic. We've spoken about the role, the partnership that we have with Avanti. It's looking at those hard-to-reach places and trying to get technologies that are actually fit for purpose and easy to deploy there, rather than trying to navigate what it might take to extend terrestrial fiber to some of this very difficult terrain and hard-to-reach places. But it is a mix. It's a mix of private investment and capital, really chasing that problem. It's a mix of know-how, it's policy, it's innovation, because then if people are not consuming the services and they don't have services or content that's relevant to meet their needs where they are, then the economic value of the technology is not fully realized. So we think it's a combination of all those things. It's not one in and of itself. It's really building that ecosystem that feeds on other parts of it that ultimately makes that fully connected vision a reality.
Indeed, I mean, the word that you used there that I thought was really pertinent was relevant, because without access to the things that people really need, it doesn't mean anything. And you know, we got very excited when WAP came out and you could browse the internet on a mobile phone. Who remembers WAP? Anyone? Yeah? Who remembers how excited we were about it, and 3 days later we were like, all you can do is read a Wikipedia entry, basically. And it's those relevant services that really improve things. I mean, one of the important things, as we've discovering in the last few years, is access to financial services. Yeah. Isn't that a great enabler, Libby?
I think absolutely, and you talked about this earlier on. So in terms of financial services, and that creates a stability in areas where we might not be able to get to. And on the back of that, you can then build out, whether it be from a solar point of view or connectivity more broadly in some of the rural areas. I think that's a big opportunity. If you go back to way back when they were talking about how would you do that with WAP, now today you've got the applications and the technology, and we can see how that can work. And ultimately we can fill some of those gaps to be able to support that, you know, in Africa and very much in Nigeria.
Indeed. I mean, some of the other things that are rapidly growing out, I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me earlier. It's not a problem I often have that people can't hear me. Some of those other sectors that are going to develop on the back of all of these, Funke, manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, e-commerce, education. I mean, these are things that are now available online. I mean, this, you know, Coursera and several other services offer free online education in a way that was just not possible 5 years ago, let alone a year ago. So these are powerful ways of including people in the system. And I'm going to ask you the same question, Libby.
I would agree. I mean, and you talk about education and Coursera and free content and how enabling that is. And I mean, within MainOne, we do use some of those platforms, massively online platforms, for training and staff training and skills development. So I will leave that part, but the internet clearly enables that. But I want to talk about our economy in Nigeria and the agricultural value chain. And a lot of what is talked about is how we are not producing as much, even though or packaging as much, because a lot of the produce just goes to waste or to rot on the farms. And there is the introduction of more technology into the agricultural value chain, and we're truly hoping that in upcoming years it will transform the agricultural sector, which is still the largest sector of our economy and the highest employer of labor in the country. Now, right from the farm, people can communicate to processors the availability of produce, so they can arrange for transportation. They can have access to finance. They can have access with small grower farms, and you have several startups that are starting to enable that. They can have access to insurance. So it's an entire value chain of agriculture or agricultural processing, and then getting those goods into market. And so technology, as you rightly said, we see playing a role not just in what is viewed as pure tech or services, but some of the more traditional areas that are really a large part of our economy, such as agriculture.
I mean, agriculture, of course, is what we eat. I mean, we can't eat cell phones, and Africa could be the world's breadbasket. I mean, it's certainly in the equatorial regions where it's so unbelievably fertile. You know, it's the growth possibilities for farmers, but also to feed everybody is an important thing. And Libby, you had some thoughts. I saw you vigorously nodding your head.
I think also you think about agriculture, but also in terms of, you asked about manufacturing. Manufacturing is another opportunity that when we give connectivity, ultimately we can manufacture in remote areas. We then create jobs in those remote areas. We give them access to be able to develop and educate their teams and ultimately underpin the company's success. And I think they then start to impact the communities. And as Funke was saying, that actually this whole thing is an ecosystem, and ultimately connectivity starts to underpin all of that ability to work in these areas.
I mean, indeed, a big word in South Africa, as it is in any country with mining, is beneficiation. How do you take the raw minerals, add value to them, and then sell them, as opposed to just selling the raw minerals and with access to the information superhighway. Remember when they called the internet that? The information superhighway has lots of really useful ways of doing things, and of course, when you're closer to where something is being produced or mined, then you can apply those services and reap a better reward for the country.
Yes, indeed. I like the word you said, beneficiation. And when we think about it, in those rural areas, when you do not have access to information, if you're producing raw materials that are being exported without any value addition, it only takes access to the internet to see the price differential of what the end product looks like, to get young people inspired to say, I want that. And so that's the power that the internet or information brings. You look at the issues of development and resource-bound economies, and perhaps in some areas you need large amounts of investment to build refineries or things like that add value to products. But then you talk about some of the areas that may not be as the same level of investment. Still some investment is required, but mining or agriculture, where a little bit of value addition that can be done on a much smaller scale goes a long way. And I think really that's the power that having access to knowledge, to information, to real-time market data in terms of pricing and demand brings in terms of economic empowerment and development, opening people's eyes to the opportunities that exist, giving them access to those global markets in which they can directly participate. And I think that's really where some of the transformative power of technology is going to come into our society.
Indeed, and I mean, in my case, just education. I didn't get glasses till I was 13. I didn't know the blackboard was part of the learning experience. Everything I learned was basically reading in a book. If we can give kids access to books, if they can just read things, then it opens up their minds in a way that's just remarkable. Education is the greatest enabler in the world, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think there's some statistics that say if we don't get to these children and get them started in education before the age of 8, then there's a real direct correlation between their longer term success from a life point of view. And I think this education piece is absolutely key, not just with the children, but also in the local area where we can see this, that the communities are developing through connection. So that's very, very important.
And of course you can watch soccer online. Let's not forget one of the most important things of the internet. And cat videos, very important. Who gets through the day without one like happy little cat video? But contrary to fears, Funke, e-commerce continues to grow in Nigeria. especially for online retailers that have bricks and mortar. What are the expectations for the future? And are you expecting to see other international players come in? And there's a wave of companies like Flutterwave and Lydia and Pugga, and they're doing really fantastic stuff, aren't they?
Yes, indeed. I mean, we have had some consolidation in the e-commerce sector. However, when you look at the numbers, they continue to grow, both in terms of the volumes that we're seeing go through e-channels. And we're also starting to see the global players sell into some of these markets. I think the challenge is really to bring local players who have the capital behind them and the ability to scale to meet the needs of the market. As you said, innovation here is born out of necessity, and just as prepaid models for telecommunication services were born out of Africa, I think for e-commerce to fully scale here, we're going to need additional innovations that are useful to our market. You talked about what 3 words. It will be interesting to see the first e-commerce company in Nigeria, for example, that's able to adopt that kind of technology. So someone from that example you had in your presentation in Ebonyi State can now order products, a new refrigerator to be delivered to Beans, whatever location, where
Beans Giggle Packets. I think that's the address of your office. Beans Giggle Packets.
Exactly. So exactly. So you start seeing some of these possibilities, and I think the innovation, because we have unique environments. We have issues of address schemes and formal address and postal or delivery locations. We have issues in terms of identity. We have issues in terms of payment. And you could start saying you have to innovate in those areas. You have to bring new solutions to the table to be able to scale. And so I think it's a unique opportunity for people who are trying to address those challenges, or those opportunities, not from the what becomes now a traditional lens of how an Amazon will do it, to how you need to do it to be successful and to become the dominant retailer in markets like Nigeria.
Indeed, and Amazon teaches us a lot of lessons. Jeff Bezos in the last day or two has taught us never take selfies and send them to anyone, especially of a compromising nature. I thought that was common cause and everyone knew that. But Amazon's great efficacy, it's a nice big word, just means efficient. The efficiency that Amazon brings is the delivery, and with the ability to deliver, it enables e-commerce, doesn't it, Libby?
It does, and ultimately it enables the ability to be able to set, whether it's very small businesses or medium-sized businesses, to get them into a position to be open and ready to go. So I think that's absolutely key. But in terms of the innovation, it's bringing and encouraging the right people to come and invest in the country and develop that innovation, I think is absolutely part of it.
So my final question, and I'll start with you, Libby, because you're closest. What do you see in the next 5 years happening? What is the picture you see of Nigeria and West Africa and Africa in the next 5 years with all of this power of connectivity and all of these services we've just discussed being delivered?
I'd like to see that ultimately we're using our services and we're using connectivity to get out into these more rural areas and support Nigeria in developing, educating and connecting our people, and using some of the learnings that we have from the other countries that we've worked in with iKnowledge and our eco organisation from an educational point of view. And I think that can be supported by MainOne, but also other partners here, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys. I think all of us will be involved in this, and I think over the next 5 years we have an enormous opportunity, and that's incredibly exciting.
Thank you. Funke.
Improved economic prosperity, if I could put it that way. Nigeria has had this challenge where our economy has been really dependent on the oil sector, and we keep talking about diversifying away from that. But the reality is value and economic growth is going to be driven by access to information and access to technology. And we see the next 5 years as presenting a tremendous opportunity for Nigerians and Nigerian businesses that are willing to take the step forward to adopt technology, to innovate and leverage those technologies to drive greater economic prosperity here.
Great, and I have to agree, because in South Africa we have the same thing. We're an economy based on mining. Nigeria is based on oil. Look at what happened to Venezuela when there was a problem. There's no backup plan for the economy, isn't there? So just to sum up, the access to information, as you've both said, provides a real opportunity to do different things with the economy and to enable people to have a different way of doing work, especially in the rural areas where, as you say, Funke, relevant services make it possible for people to do more things. Personally, I'm thrilled to hear such a focus on agriculture, because not only is it the largest sector, as you say, but it's also it's what we eat. You know, we can't play Fortnite without eating. It doesn't matter how many Red Bulls you drink. I believe we're going to cross to some questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions?
Once again, can we appreciate the panelists? Can we appreciate the panelists? Okay, please come forward. Do you have questions? Okay, I think you just take it from there. Hold on. I need to be sure before you start. Is he the only one that wants to ask questions? Okay, please tell us your name, your genotype. Sorry, just tell us your name.
Thank you. I'm Blessed Saint from Insight International Company. I'm the coordinator of National Digital Adoption Campaign. I want to ask, because we know that government always have a platform for every ministry and department and project. Now, for tech space, we know that there is NOTAD and NINTA, the National Information Technology Development Agency. Now, my question is, what being a platform, is there any relationship between MainOne and NINTA to carrying out some of these? And then if we have, because why I'm asking that question is that some of the effort we put in digital space are probably the government have done some things, but if there is partnership, there may be a way of maximizing that. That's why I asked the question, is there any partnership with NINTA, and to what extent? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you. All right, Ma, would you like to respond to the question?
Yes, indeed. We do work with NITDA, which is the National Information Technology Development Agency. Their mandate is to develop ICT within Nigeria. They're big advocates for local content. They are putting in place policies to ensure the growth of the sector in general, and we do have a consultative relationship with that agency. NOTAP is about technology imports into Nigeria, so that they are an enabler for technology transfer. I think in terms of what we do at MainOne, we're probably ahead of NOTAP, because we're all about technology transfer and bringing capacity to deploy and grow technology into Nigeria. So we're very much aligned with what they are doing there.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you. Do we have one more question before we round off the segment? Okay, please, could you please come? Okay, the mic. We'll take the mic to you quickly. You tell us your name and your marital, sorry, your name and then the company you work with.
Okay, my name is Dorcas. I work for InfoWare.
Okay.
My question goes to Ms. Funke. I want to ask, what does MainOne have in plan for the youth? We know Nigeria and Africa has a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of things to be done. There's a lot of innovations. Is there like an investment plan for the youth? Is there a way to allow us to actually be the leaders of tomorrow, like we usually say when we're in primary school? Is there anything on board for the youth? Thank you.
This is becoming. Are you vying for any post in Lagos State?
No, that's what I was going to say. We just created a position, Minister of Youth, and they don't know. We're not a government agency in that sense, so we don't have a Ministry of Youth Development. However, a lot of what we do enables our younger population who are more in tune with technology, who are looking for new jobs, who are starting companies. So we work with a lot of tech hubs and innovation centers. We work with academic institutions to enable them with technology and work with a lot of startups. So I think really by making infrastructure and the internet more accessible to young people, we're giving them the enablement that is critical for them to be more productive citizens, and I think that is really the focus of MainOne as a private enterprise.
Thank you so much. We're rounding off this segment now. The guy at the back, please. Do you mind quick start coming forward before we get the mic to you? Quickly. Yes, I can see you. Please come quickly, so we can round off the segment now because we will be taking the first raffle draw, and then your name, sir.
My name is Oyama Igbara.
Okay, sir.
Oyama Igbara from TerraWorks Nigeria Limited.
Okay.
Enabling West African digital economy.
Yes.
I understand that with that digital transformation, businesses will go into extinct soon. So how do we avoid this, especially in rural areas and in some part of the underdeveloped country?
Okay, sir. Where are you from, sir?
I'm from Nigeria Limited.
Where?
TerraWorks.
No, I mean the state you are from.
The state I'm from?
Yes.
I'm from Cross River.
Cross River?
Yeah.
Okay, sir. All right, sir. Thank you. All right. Ma, who are you?
Well, how do we avoid extinction? You come to Nerds Unite. You talk to a lot of the tech companies here. Find out about the latest and greatest technologies, network, listen to the panelists, get different ideas, and then you go to work and figure out how you put those technologies to work in your rural areas. If you're in Lagos, if you want to do something in Cross River, we know around the whole Tinapa complex, there are lots of opportunities to deploy technology and drive increased productivity out of that state. So we hope you'll be taking some of the ideas that we're sharing today. Avanti with satellite communication services is another one. So think of opening up the tourism, ecotourism in Cross River with connectivity from Avanti, and all of a sudden, you have some transformative business there and you're putting people to work. So the idea is that people get ideas, get inspired by what you're able to learn here today and take it back and put those ideas to work to drive value.
Thank you so much. And so we're taking the last one for now. Excuse me, quickly. The last question for now, and then we'll go. Tell us your name, and then.
Thank you. My name is Chisom Wisu. I work for Info.
Your name is?
Chisom.
Okay.
So I work for Infomo Nigeria Limited.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the talk. My question is for Ms. Funke.
Okay.
She talked about the ecosystem about everybody playing part in this. I want to ask if this ecosystem is real or is it virtual. For instance, we might have a product that we want to deliver in the southeast or in those rural areas, and maybe the technology is not there, or the person to translate the content, maybe from English to that local content, is not there. And maybe in 2 years' time, if we're going to wait, the content is going to be obsolete. So is there like a concrete or a real ecosystem where everybody is playing? Maybe when this person finishes his work, when MainOne lays the cable for internet connectivity, there is somebody that is doing translation of content, so that when we want to deliver our own content, like everything is in place. Yeah, thank you.
Ma, did you get the virtual, and the,
Yes, I think just like in nature, ecosystems evolve, and perhaps there is some God-ordered hierarchy that defines, plants feed animals, animals feed bigger animals. It's not as if it's formally laid out and that those boxes are already drawn. I think an ecosystem organically develops and evolves over time. So if I disappoint you in saying, no, the ecosystem is not formulaic and something where you just bring something and you connect into, and what you need is there, but just as you described, if there is a lot of content from a part of a country that needs translation services, how the ecosystem will develop is someone would recognize that opportunity and start meeting that need, and thereby creating value to others and economic value to themselves. So it's not as if the ecosystem is something that's pre-structured, predefined, you come, you plug into, and you get what you need out of it. It's something that organically evolves as all these developments take place around us, and we are the ones who then create the ecosystem collectively based on the opportunities that we see.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we please put hands together for all our panelists? So you like to round off, or you just quickly, can we appreciate them as they just take pictures? Can we please ask them, can we celebrate them? Photographers, can you just take pictures with them together? Photographers, are you ready? Yes, quickly. Clarity, okay. They're coming close now. Remember to use the hashtag Unite, Nerds Unite 2019.